Hello, my name is Buddy Childress, and I'm Executive Director of Needle's Eye Ministries. We are really happy to have you with us today for our monthly speaker series. We hope you enjoy it. Doug Middleton, Chief Doug Middleton, has been around Needle's Eye for a number of years. I want to tell you a little bit about him, and I'll tell you a little bit about his relationship with Needle's Eye. He has been a sworn police officer since 1972 in Henrico County. Some of the things that you may not know about our current chief of police have to do with his academic and professional preparation for what he does. I'm not going to read all of those. It would take too long. But I want to share just a couple of things about his professional background. He is a graduate of, among other special postgraduate programs, the Police Executive Leadership School of the Jepson School of Leadership of the University of Richmond, the Senior Management Institute for Police at Harvard University, the Dignitary Protection School conducted by the Secret Police, and the Law Enforcement Executive Development School conducted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Chief Middleton is also a graduate of the LMR class, Leadership Metro Richmond, and has been involved with that since. He has been a Rotarian since 2000 and works with the West Richmond Rotary in that regard, and is also a member at Weston Assembly of God. He is married. His wife Brenda is here with him today, and we're very happy to have her. But among the things that I've read to you and some of the things that I have had to leave out, let me say this about Doug from the standpoint of his personal background. Of all the things I've read, I think perhaps this is the one composite that really impacts me the most. He was in the United States Army during Vietnam and was a helicopter crew member. He was awarded 14 awards of the Air Medal for combat missions and the Air Medal with V device for heroism in flight. Being a Vietnam-era person, one who thankfully did not have to go over there, that is so impressive to me, and it just speaks volumes, among many other things, about the Henrico Chief of Police. Doug has been, prior to this series, a former speaker for us several years ago. He is a member of our advisory board of Needle's Eye. And candidly, I am a native of Henrico County, and I speak now as a native of that county and one who's lived there most of my life, and I cannot think of having a chief of police more capable and more qualified than our speaker today. Help me welcome Chief of Police Doug Middleton. Want some water?
Thank you, buddy. I'm pleased to be here today and to speak to you, and I want to just tell you, buddy, that my pastor is here. He's sitting next to my wife over here, and just before Buddy got up, he made the statement that that guy is such a loser. Talking about you, buddy. I don't know why he said that, but I thought I'd tell you about him anyway.
I wanted security to screen before we had this because I knew he was going to be at one of these, so we need to talk about that.
Well, you need to keep these things in Henrico County, then. I can take care of that. Well, thank you for being here today. I've got some family here. I have friends here, people from work, people from church, and it's just it's a pleasure and an honor and a very humbling experience to be here this morning. Several years ago, Buddy asked me to present my testimony at a speaker series, and I agreed to do so. And it was a lot of pressure, but it was a lot of pressure in a positive way. I've always found that when I take the time to talk about my experience and how my faith has helped me, it always deepens that experience when I share it with other people. When I last spoke, I shared a few things about my life that before I get into anything new that I want to talk to you about today that I think would be important for me to restate. I grew up in a Christian home. My parents were good people. They taught me the ways of faith and how to live a faith-filled life, and they provided for all of my needs. We had a happy home. There were 5 children, and we all got along well. We all loved each other. And I had 2 parents who cared for their children. I always thought that although we had very little in material things in our lives, my life spiritually was somewhat insignificant because I'd really lived in an environment where church and faith had always been a part of everything we did. There were times when I struggled with my faith, as most people do, and I was by no means a perfect child. In fact, I must have been a real torment for my mother, who has now gone on to be with the Lord, because she used to tell me all the time that if she could just get me out of high school before I killed myself in some daredevil scheme or activity, that she would feel like she had fulfilled what God expected of her as a mother. I was a type A personality when I was younger. Of course, those of you who know me now know that I'm very lethargic and laid back. On one occasion later in my life, I was talking with Joan Roden, who was the wife of one of our former pastors, Dr. H. Robert Roden. And I was explaining to her my thoughts about my testimony, and that I really didn't feel like I had much of a testimony because I had not been raised up out of a pit of despair and not pulled from some gutter and had all of these problems in my life that God saved me from. And she got a little bit irritated with me when I said that, and said that she wanted me to understand that she felt like being able to testify to a life of consistent living for Christ was the best testimony of all. And she was pretty persistent and consistent with that, and I guess I must have believed her, because I'm here today. And my story today is to demonstrate you how God is ready to accept full responsibility for the life that is wholly committed to Him. I've often failed in my commitment, but He has never failed in His willingness to accept responsibility for my life. After I came to work for the Henrico County Police Division in 1972, I eventually made a decision to seek the rank of sergeant. For 5 consecutive years, I tried by participating in a competitive promotion process, only to be disappointed each time that I tried. The process at that time was a points-based system, and it was based on a series of tests. And each year, I would take the test, and I would place in the list. I always placed very well. In fact, 3 of those 5 years, at the end of the year when the list expired, I was in the #1 chair. Had another promotion become available, I would have gotten it. But it didn't happen. And I tell you, getting promoted in an organization like the Henrico Police Division is not an easy task. There's a lot of talent, there are a lot of skilled people, a lot of very professional people, well-educated and trained. So the process for me had become somewhat disappointing year after year, knowing the competition. And but I made one last attempt at it at the encouragement of my wife, and tried a 6th time. Several promotions were made again that year, and once again I finished the year up sitting at the top of the list. And I remember getting in my car one morning, driving to work, and just saying a prayer, which I typically did a lot when I was driving to work because it was some quiet time for me. But on this particular morning, I found myself talking to God in a different way than I had before, because I wasn't asking Him to promote me anymore. I got to the point where I had read Colossians 3:23, "Whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart, as though you're working for the Lord and not for man. For it's the Lord Christ you're serving, and your reward is with Him in heaven." And I told God that I was just going to leave promotions and recognition up to Him. My goal was to serve Him and let my testimony be the most important thing I had to do in my career as a police officer. It wasn't how far up the ladder of success I climbed as much as it was how much of an influence I could be with the way I lived my life and my efforts to serve Him. So I arrived at work that day with any promotion far from my mind, and just satisfied to be serving a great and a good God and having a job that I love to do. Near the end of my shift that day, I got a call to come to the chief's office, which wasn't unusual. I worked in administration at that time, and there were often things that he would have me take care of for him. And when I got to his office, he told me that another retirement had been announced, that I was next to be on the list to be promoted to sergeant. Did I want the promotion? And of course I said yes. And once again, I came to realize that God is ready to accept full responsibility for the life that's wholly committed to Him. Now let me go back a little bit of time and distance and talk a little bit about some of the things that Buddy mentioned to you. Before I was a police officer and I was serving in the United States Army. As a young soldier in Vietnam, I saw my share of action as a crew member on a Huey UH-1 helicopter. We flew missions daily over hostile locations, and we were often fired upon. I lost 4 good friends in my unit when their helicopter was shot down over Cambodia during a series of classified missions that we had been conducting. I continued, however, to do my job as a soldier and to do it with commitment to the best of my ability. And I reached a point when I had 2 weeks left to serve in Vietnam, just about time to come home, that I decided that enough risk had been taken, and I wanted to make sure that I left Vietnam and arrived home alive. So I requested to be relieved of flight duty, figuring that I was getting away from all the hazards of the job. And after 14 air medals for 840 hours of combat missions, an air medal for heroism in aerial flight, 2 Bronze Stars, and permanent award of Army Aviation Wings, I stepped aside and took a guard duty post, figuring that I'd probably made a good decision that was going to get me safely home.